Welcome, you're watching Charter California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. We are joined by Tonia Reyes Uranga. She is a candidate for the California State Assembly. She served on the Long Beach City Council for 8 years, and she is currently the executive director of the Miguel Contreras Foundation. Where are you running, ma'am, if I may ask? The 70th Assembly District, which is what?
The 70th is the old 54th AD, so if you know your old number, your new number is 70th. It's Long Beach, San Pedro, Signal Hill, and Avalon.
And so the incumbent is Bonnie Lowenthal, but she is termed out.
She's termed out, yes.
So let's talk about why you're running. You had 8 successful years on the Long Beach City Council. You're doing well as the first executive director of the Miguel Contreras Foundation. Why not enjoy your life and not worry about Sacramento?
That's what my husband asks.
Exactly.
I think it's just a great time to be in Sacramento. We have what I think is one of the smartest governors that we've had in a while.
Even Republicans say that.
That's true, that's true. And, you know, it's a good time to be there if you want to represent your community. We have a lot of issues that we have to tackle. We have the honor of implementing Affordable Health Care Act.
Yes, you do.
And I think that, you know, California has such a great brain trust with our health care leaders that we're going to be in the forefront of the nation on this. And so I really am excited about the fact that we're going to be able to provide Californians, especially those in the 70th AD, with insurance. It's something that's never been...
So let's talk about the Affordable Care Act, because obviously it's an issue that continues to be on the minds of voters. We know recently, one could argue there may be some bumps in the implementation. We know that the Obama administration is postponing a few elements of it because of some computer questions. That being said, California is on the forefront of reform. We are implementing the exchanges. We are accepting the expansion of Medicaid. So given that, as you're speaking with residents of the new 70th, what are their hopes and their fears about the Affordable Care Act and reform?
Well, I think most people are hopeful that it'll work. And if it's going to work anywhere, it'll work here in California. We have, you know, Molina Healthcare. We have HealthNet, Healthcare Partners, all in the area. The 70th AD has some fantastic medical institutions. And
well, it is Long Beach.
That's right.
Yeah, it is Long Beach.
And so it really does allow us to kind of be in the forefront and be in the planning and implementation stages with all this brain power that we have here. But I think the good thing is that it will also give us an expansion of jobs. You know, I was speaking to
arguably.
someone. Well, we hope so. Kaiser is gearing up. Just in one site, they talked about having 15 more physicians, which include, you know, all the ancillary professions that support that physician. So I think we need to look at it in a positive way and say, you know, the devil's in the details. It's not going to be perfect, but if anyone can get it right, it's us. And so I'm real excited to be there.
You sat on the Long Beach City Council for 8 years, one of this state's great cities, one of the state's largest cities. And I think it's fair to say, or at least some would argue, I'm just repeating what I've been told, that there is a war going on against cities vis-a-vis Sacramento. We look at how Sacramento has balanced its budget, and some would argue it's been balanced on the backs of cities. We know that redevelopment was completely eliminated, and Long Beach had used redevelopment. Recently, California dramatically overhauled what we know as enterprise zones. They're a shell of their former selves. A lot of the members in Sacramento are former city council members, and yet they have voted to eliminate redevelopment, to all but eliminate enterprise zones. Should you arrive in Sacramento, you're a Democrat, how will you kind of buck that trend, if that's what you want to do? Maybe you think what was done was correct.
Well, you know, I think from the local perspective, we were shocked and dismayed that they actually did dismantle redevelopment, that we had the loss of enterprise zones. But I think once you're in Sacramento, you have choices to make. I remember talking to an assembly person, and he said that 90% of the issues that they get calls for are local issues. So they refer them to the city, not thinking, not knowing.
Sure.
But 10% are state issues, and those 10% are huge issues like education, you know, the DMV, of course, which is, you know, EDD. So I think when you look at the decisions that were made by some Democrats up in Sacramento, the question that you have to ask yourself is, if you were given that same decision, and that decision was between cutting education or cutting redevelopment, and so what would you do?
It's a tough battle. There's no doubt about it. But that being said, the enterprise zones were recently all but eliminated in times of better budgetary environments. And so, one could argue that when a redevelopment was eliminated, it was a choice between education and redevelopment. But with enterprise zones, that was really about good government and trying to reform a system that arguably was rife with abuse. I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'm not taking a position. So you see what I'm getting at? I mean,
exactly.
and yet the vast majority of Democrats went lockstep behind the Democratic governor to all but eliminate enterprise zones, zones that really benefit Democratic constituencies.
That's right, and businesses and jobs. Most local businesses hired the majority of the people in the community.
Right.
And so I think it was devastating. Part of the issue is that we want to be able to reform, not eliminate.
Right.
And I'm hoping that we could still look at that. But I have to tell you, if you know my reputation on the city council,
okay.
I was not afraid to go against a strong mayor. I was not afraid to go against, a majority of the council, and sometimes I was able to gain a majority of the council myself.
Fair enough.
Through some fast talking and good hard homework and information gathering. And so when I'm in Sacramento, I don't think it's going to be a rubber stamp. Anyone who knows me knows that that's just not me.
I want to talk about the makeup of our California legislature. I don't want to be a bean counter. I think everyone should be elected upon their strengths, even their weaknesses, and not necessarily if you can fill in a mark in a box because they hit this category or that category. That being said, we do know that California is majority women, and we also know that the legislature is nowhere close to being majority women. In fact, the numbers have been dropping as it relates to the election of women to the California Assembly. I'm sure there are plenty of reasons to vote for you other than the fact that you happen to be a woman, but let's just discuss that because it is something that is still on the minds of many voters, is representation through female voices.
Well, I mean, let's be fair. 50% of the population are women, and in this AD, in the 70th AD, it's well over 55%.
Oh, that's interesting. Mm-hmm.
So we are the majority, so there should be some look at a balance. If you look locally, we were talking about local government.
Sure.
City of LA, the largest city in LA County, no women on that council. The city of Long Beach, after this election, one.
Is that true?
One, Suja Lowenthal. And so I think we're at a crisis point because we have none in the pipeline. Traditionally, you get your assembly,
right.
your Senate, your senators, and even the statewide officers from city council and school boards.
But what's interesting is after the Anita Hill incident, I'll call it the incident, there was really a flurry of women being elected to all levels of government. That was the year that we elected Barbara Boxer, Dianne Feinstein, both still sitting U.S. senators. The numbers have dropped. Maybe we're developed and we don't care if it's a man or a woman anymore, if you know what I'm saying. People are being elected for their resumes, not their gender.
I think it's a little more than that. I think that politics has gotten pretty rough and tumble, and women, because they have so much to do with families, with jobs, with they really do double duty. And so they have to think twice, do I really want to get into this? And
No.
It requires just a tremendous amount of effort in terms of fundraising. And I always say this, even though my husband doesn't quite appreciate it.
Who is actually a member of the Long Beach Community College District, Roberto Uranga.
That's right. I always say that a candidate has to sacrifice so much to be able to run, but men cannot sacrifice something they never did in the first place.
Interesting.
And so women are sacrificing even more, and they have to ask themselves, do I really want to get into this?
So do you?
I do.
Why?
I do.
Why?
I had such fun as a city council person.
Right.
That's really where the rubber meets the road, local government.
And a big city, so you're doing the hard work. I mean, not that small cities members aren't doing hard work, but it's a big city.
Sacramento, we're looking at some major questions. Do we want a world-class educational system? We have to really address that and tackle it, and I think we need to be there with two of the largest school boards.
Speaking of education, when we come back, we're going to be speaking with Jeff Kellogg. He is the president of the Long Beach Community College District, serves with your husband, Roberto Uranga. My name is Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on Charter California Edition.
In what year did California first elect a woman to the legislature? 1876, 1894, 1908, or 1918? In 1918, California elected its first woman to the legislature. In fact, in that year, 4 women were voted in to serve in Sacramento.
Welcome back to Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Our guest is Jeff Kellogg. He is the president of the Long Beach Community College District. Congratulations, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
And I want to speak with you about funding for community colleges. I think it's fair to say this year is better than last and the last few years. In the new budget, there's a 5% bump, general fund bump, for all higher education systems in California. What do you make of it as it relates to community colleges?
Well, and I'm glad you said all higher education, because for the community college system in California, we did get more funding. But what I want people to understand is it still has not reached the levels from 2007 when the continuing cuts that you mentioned took place. So we still are in a deficit, but we are at least moving in the right direction.
I want to talk about 2007 because when we look at the K-12 system, their base grant has returned to 2007 levels. And while there's no doubt that we all have a soft spot for K-12, why is it that K-12 is being treated so differently and is the preferred child as opposed to community colleges, UC or CSU?
Well, I think you have to start with in politics, it's who has clout in Sacramento, and you have the California Teachers Association, organizations such as that, which has much more clout than community colleges.
But UC and CSU, I mean, they're strong organizations.
But the difference is in the community college system, we do have a very loose organization with trustees, for example.
Right.
But we're all independent. There's 112 community colleges, so we don't have the force that the other higher education, UC, Cal State has, and especially K-12. So it just is it's always been an issue with the community colleges, and we make the best with it. But in all fairness, we're the workhorse. We are the ones that really do carry the most in higher education. We are actually the best value to the taxpayers of California, and yet for whatever that reason is, that argument still doesn't get us the funding we need.
But often community colleges will be, I'll say, lumped in, and there'll be funding for K-14.
Right.
So why couldn't we see a K-14 situation?
There's actually a little bit of that involved still today with Proposition 98, where exactly that is where people somewhat lump us in there. But still in that formula, community colleges, and there's a little bit of this with community colleges, their attitude in Prop 98, for example, is that, well, at least we know we get a guaranteed to a certain threshold. But unfortunately, that threshold still doesn't address the needs of community colleges today. And so it's a little bit of people being exceptionally cautious, and also the bigger picture of who has the most political clout. But it's unfortunate because really community colleges are the ones that do provide the best value.
And let's talk about some of the value that community college students get. Recently, you officiated at a pinning ceremony for the nursing program at Long Beach City College. You must be very proud. The new nurses in white.
That's
the soon-to-be new RNs in red. Is that right?
It actually is. The RNs are the ones, and you notice they're wearing the white except for the men. Right. They're wearing their traditional nursing hats.
Okay.
Those are the RNs. The ones on the left, the ones that aren't wearing the white uniforms, are the ones that are working towards an RN. But the thing I'd like to point out in that picture, almost everyone in there that you see have a job waiting for them.
And that's what's stunning about the nursing profession, is that there continues to be a dearth of nurses in California and the Southwest. And as I understand it, I mean, you can start at close to 6 figures in the nursing profession, if not there.
Well, I hope that's the case for a lot of reasons, because my daughter is leaving for college next year, out of state, unfortunately, but and she's in the nursing program. Because with the new rules and regulations with nursing, you're going to see nurses take on a lot more responsibilities that doctors traditionally have done in the past. So it's a great program, and Long Beach does a phenomenal job, and I was really honored. That's a great event to go to. The families are there, the people are working hard. And
actually,
so
one of my earliest memories from many decades ago was going to my aunt's nursing graduation from Valley College. You know Valley College. And it was a great moment, and she's still a nurse 30, 40 years later.
They are all there. Great stories, people that first time in college from their families to people that have worked for many, many years. So it's always an uplifting event, and trust me, you look for uplifting events in community colleges now because there's a lot of difficult issues we deal with.
And let's talk about some difficult issues, and that specifically focuses upon, as it relates to Long Beach City, the question about programmatic cuts. We know there was tremendous contention earlier this year with regard to the elimination. It wound up being 11 programs.
Starting with 17, 19 programs.
And so talk to us about how the process is spinning out and where we go from here in light of the fact that we have seen a 5% bump in budgets.
Well, again, and people have also brought in Proposition 30 when I talk about that. So
passed in November.
Here's how I explain it, is that the cuts that have taken place since 2007, and the cuts that have taken place actually in the last year as well, the last budget cycle, Prop 30 backfilled those cuts, but it didn't fill it entirely. It's
not new money.
So it's not new money. That's the best way I can explain it.
5% is new money.
5% is new money, but how that is for all the higher education, so it's not directly to. And so there's a lot of other, the devil's always in the details of budgets. But
it's also, it's 5% after you've been cut, what, 25%?
Oh yeah, we've been cut. It's phenomenal.
Very significant.
So it really does make a difference. But the answer to your question as far as so where we are, the programs, we've discontinued those programs. And we went through a long process, open, fair process, data-driven process. And what I was most proud about, even though it was a horrible process because you're cutting programs and they all meet the mission of the college, what I was probably most proud about is that we didn't fall to the political influences of just doing it for political reasons only. That's when you get in trouble. And we've talked about in the past of what got City College of San Francisco in trouble because they just recently lost their accreditation, the largest community college in California, 80 to 100,000 students. One of the reasons they lost their accreditation is because they were making decisions based on political influences or personal agendas.
So what happened? So they've lost it? They're not on?
They are proceeding now. The next step is they actually have an appeal, but in the 14 areas that they were cited by the Accreditation Commission, they addressed only 2. So they still have 12 of the 14 that they have not addressed. They're given an opportunity.
Are they on show cause or they're done?
No, they are now. They're beyond show cause. Now they actually in the process are allowed to essentially appeal the decision of the Accreditation Commission that they've lost their accreditation. And then after that point in time, there's a lot of other steps that take place. The only other college, by the way, is Compton College that's lost their accreditation.
And they were taken over by Carson, was it?
They were taken over by El Camino. There was 2 colleges that could have taken over, Long Beach or El Camino, and actually Los Angeles, and El Camino ended up taking over. The problem you have here is you have a college, San Francisco City College, that is 80 to 100,000.
It's the largest.
It's the largest. And a lot of people said it was too big to fail.
So what's going to happen?
Well, they are going to have to find a way to stay accredited, which means they're probably going to have to make tremendous reforms. The biggest reform that's going to take place, which people may or may not understand, and I'll roll it back to Long Beach, but the chancellor for California appoints a special trustee.
But I had thought that when you get put on sanction, you have to have a plan in place to literally shut down.
They did. That was part of the show cause. They have to begin to show what the process is going to be to shut down their college.
But are they not going to shut down?
No, they'll, because they still have to offer so much. So the best scenario is going to be they will make the changes by this special trustee that I mentioned. Special trustee, by the way, takes the place of all the other elected trustees. It's a very direct approach to try to fix the problems. Now, the reason I bring it up, and when people talk to me about what I hear about in Long Beach, is you'll hear people when we have cuts, well, get rid of administrators. That's always an easy thing to do unless you're an administrator.
Right.
The other one they'll talk about is not getting rid of any programs because they have value. That's exactly the model that the City College of San Francisco did. They actually replaced their administrators and put faculty members into those spots. They never cut any programs, even though they were no longer really efficient.
Right.
And so when people ask why we do things at Long Beach, because we're a model on how you should do things. If you want to see a model on how you shouldn't do, unfortunately, City College of San Francisco is that example.
So what's going to happen? I mean, you work, in addition to being a trustee, you work in the area.
I work for a company, actually, a gentleman by the name of Mike Moss, who was an administrator at Long Beach when I was a student there.
That's amazing.
And showing how decades later he became my mentor, taught me the business, and working with community colleges in particular on educational facility master planning, accreditation compliance. And you learn how what colleges need to do, real simple. You need to live within your means, and unfortunately, we are funded by the state of California. We don't have.
You can't set your own tuition fees.
No, people like to think whenever there's an increase in our tuition, even though it's very reasonable, it's still set by the state legislature, and all that money goes into the general fund, and then it's allocated to, among other people, community colleges. But we compete with prisons and all the other.
Of course. Okay, his name is Jeff Kellogg. He is president of the Long Beach Community College District. My name is Brad Pomerance. We thank you so much for watching Charter California Edition.
In what year did California begin charging students to attend community college? 1956, 1968, 1978, 1984. Until 1984, Californians did not have to pay to attend any of the state's community colleges.
Welcome back to Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Our guest, Scott Svonkin, he is now the Vice President of the Los Angeles Community College District. He is also serving as President of the Los Angeles County School Trustees Association. We'll talk about both organizations, but first, congratulations, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor.
You've been on the board for 2 years,
Yes.
and you were recently elected by your peers, 7
Yes.
members. What does that mean?
Well, I get to help set the agenda for the district. My goal is to continue the reform. I was elected to help reform the challenges with the bond program.
Explain the bond program for our viewers statewide.
Well, we have a $6 billion building program to refurbish and build new classrooms. And it went off track just before I got elected. And they found a number.
What happened?
Well, there was a lot of waste.
I've seen the articles.
Yeah.
But what happened?
Well, the LA Times did one of the largest exposés in their history, and they talked about waste, fraud, and abuse. And we stopped the program. We changed the policies around contracting. We made sure that it was all open and fair. There had been a lot of behind the scenes giving away of contracts, and so we turned over information to the district attorney, worked closely with them. We have done everything we can.
Are there indictments?
The district attorney has not handed down indictments, but I'm hopeful that those that cheated the public will be held accountable.
At the same time, so a lot of change going on at this district, in addition to a search for the chancellor.
Right.
Of the Los Angeles Community College District. It's the largest in the state?
It's the largest in the nation.
In the nation.
9 campuses, and he is or she is the CEO. He or she will be the CEO of the largest district in the nation. We are similar in many ways to the UCs or the CSUs. So it's a great job. We're the highest paid in the state, one of the highest paid in the nation, and we're looking for the best candidate, male, female.
How does that look? How does that work?
We
Do you have a search firm?
We've hired a national search firm, and we are looking at people that are interested in a challenge because we are the biggest, most diverse college district in the nation.
What about the inherent challenges working for a large community college district in the state of California, which really in some ways hamstrings the ability of specific community colleges to set tuitions, to set fees, to set curricula? It's a challenge.
It is. We are probably one of the most complex states as far as education infrastructure and policies, and so the candidate hopefully will have a grasp of California politics and how the district runs. And so we're looking far and wide, and we hope that the best people in the nation will apply.
What about someone who's homegrown?
We've had that happen in the past, but I'm not aware of anybody that's expressed interest from within to apply. A lot of our presidents, you generally would go from being a college president to being a vice chancellor to chancellor.
I see.
And the current vice chancellors don't seem to be interested in changing jobs.
At the same time, and we've discussed this before, we have a system, like you said, the largest in the nation, not only LACCD,
Right.
but the entire community college district system in California, that has faced challenges vis-a-vis Sacramento. Some would argue that the system is the stepchild to the UCs, to the CSUs, and definitely to K-12.
Right.
And so what do you hope, and how important is it for each chancellor to be able to navigate Sacramento?
Well, it's critical because I think we need to do a better job as the largest district in the nation advocating for community colleges, both our own and the ones around the state. We should be the loudest, clearest, most aggressive voice to making sure we get our fair share and that community colleges continue to be the pathway to people's dreams.
But why is it that community colleges historically have had such a difficult time getting their fair share? I think about this recent budget negotiation whereby K-12 got essentially restored
Right.
to pre-recession levels. Community colleges did not, UCs did not, CSUs did not. Why?
Well, I think we need to do better at making the case. I think people don't always remember us. people forget. You go to a community college and then you go into a 4-year school. You go to a community college and then you get a job. A lot of times people don't remember, and we've got to remind the legislature and the governor. Governor Brown, more than anyone, should remember, because he got his start at the LA community colleges.
Have we figured out whose seat?
I believe it's Mike Ings.
It's not your seat.
It's not my seat. Although I'd like to say it is, it's not.
It's not your seat.
Yeah.
So one would think that Governor Brown would have a soft spot for community colleges.
Right.
I don't know if an objective analysis would suggest that, but be that as it may, I want to also talk to you about LACCD. LACCD is, as we said, the Los Angeles County School Trustees Association. Yeah. A lot of letters, a lot of words. What is it?
Well, the LA County School Trustees Association is a group that it's an association of every school board member and community college in the county. So every elected official that represents education is a part of it.
And the reason I jumped on this right away is because it begs the question. I think that K-12 trustees have pretty different interests.
Yeah.
I mean, one could argue wildly different interests than 13 and 14 trustees, community college trustees.
Yeah, I think our interests are the same, because the biggest challenge community colleges face helping our students is that the ones that come unprepared don't succeed. And so we have a vested interest in helping our K-12 brothers and sisters and making sure that every student comes to community college prepared.
Okay. Fair answer, but still, it is, look, when you look at college funding, when you look at K-12 funding, you're fighting for the same dollars. It's undeniable.
Yeah.
And I just look at what happened this last budget cycle, and it just seems to me K-12 was a huge winner.
Right.
And everyone else wasn't.
We need to convince the governor and the legislature that they've helped bring back the K-12 system, and now the next go around they need to help bring back the community colleges. We need to bring back the seats that we've lost, the over $100 million that was reduced over the last 5 years from the system, and make sure that we get fully funded for next year.
Because consider this. As you said, the community colleges were defunded by about $100 million,
right.
About 25%
right.
of its budget.
Correct.
And in the recent budget negotiation, CSU, UC, and community colleges got a 5% bump. Nice.
Right. It's
whereas
helpful.
K-12 got fully restored.
Right.
So,
well, I think the thing is that we all have to be vigilant and make sure the public understands, because more people go to community college than go to the UCs and CSUs combined.
So is it time for community colleges to turn inward and say we need to go to our voters and we need to ask our voters to help us fund?
I think that time may come. I'm not sure that we're ready yet. The economy's still growing. I think we need to go back to the legislature and the governor and say, you've restored money to the K-12 system. You now need to restore the community colleges, because it's a pathway. Help the youngest children, then help the community colleges, and then the CSUs and UCs. And it becomes difficult when we start competing with each other. I'm hoping by being president of LACCD that we will collaborate and not compete.
What about the notion that we should lower the threshold to pass certain bonds, to the extent that a community college could go to the voters and seek a 55% vote,
right.
as opposed to a 67% vote for anything?
I think it's a good idea that all of education, public safety has a chance to go to the voters and ask them, do you want to fund this? And let the voters decide. I think that's a good way to do it, but I think that it's going to take some time. I believe it'll be on the ballot.
Is it though?
Will it take
I mean,
it'll be on the ballot.
There's a lot of people in the legislature that are really pushing to lower that threshold.
Yeah. Well, but the voters have to decide.
Ultimately, it has to go to them.
Right. The voters have to decide to lower the threshold. It can't be done by elected officials. It has to be done by the people. I think it's a good idea. I think that way the voters can set priorities. If they want to invest a little more in community colleges, we can ask for it and they can decide yes or no.
Right now, do community colleges need 2/3? I know K-12 has a lower threshold for bonds that deal with construction.
It's the same for us.
It is.
If it's for construction, it's the same lower threshold. But if it's for added classes or personnel, it's the higher threshold.
Okay, his name is Scott Svonkin. He is the Vice President of the Los Angeles Community College District. My name is Brad Pomerance. Thank you so much for watching Charter California Edition.